do get stuck into poetry and storytelling. You'd be surprised. Recording in progress. Excellent. Okay, groovy. So welcome everybody. This is the launch for Monstrous, and if you've not seen Monstrous yet, it looks like yes, we've got. Oh, of course, it green screens itself. Maybe I'll turn off the background. Let's do that. Okay, no more Aurora Borealis for you, but you do get a lovely green poetry pamphlet there. If you've not touched this pamphlet yet, you've only seen it. It's got a wonderful texture. The front cover feels slightly organic. It's kind of exciting. It's a good choice, I think. Tom, you just kind of go, what is this? Kind of, yeah.
And then you read the poems and do it again.
Yeah. Kind of vellum vibe. I like it. So yeah, this is the launch for a collection of poetic story tales as told by the creatures themselves. It's been a while coming, and it is just very, very exciting to physically see it and hold it and have it out in the world. And yeah, very excited that Tom is going to be able to share a bunch of it with us. And just to kind of whet your appetite, give you a whole show's worth, we'll be having Tim Ralphs, who I haven't seen in a gazillion years, as we were discussing earlier. So it's just very exciting. You're right there. It's going to be giving us, yeah, we think about 8 years, but time is soup. So we're sort of kind of making that up as we go along. Very exciting. So yeah, he'll be bringing you some dark tales of Scottish fairies, and that's not as in the twinkly little Arthur Conan Doyle fairies, I suspect. Less twinkly, you never know. Might be a whole change of vibe from what you were saying this morning. But yeah, expect darkness, I suspect. And all of us are going to be talking to you about Baba Yagas, because that's their thing, apparently, that we all have in common. So for those of you who are joining us on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, hello. We won't be able to interact with you very much, but do feel free to leave comments so that we can see stuff later. It'd be really nice to hear what you thought of it. And if you're here in the Zoom event, then do feel free to use the chat if you'd like to sort of chime in if things kind of strike you as exciting. Don't feel you have to unmute. Don't feel you have to mute, but if you would like to unmute to let the tellers know how you're feeling about what they are saying, put the camera on if you're comfortable with it, but none of that is mandatory. One of the things I am going to point out is mandatory, however, is try not to heckle. That would be a good thing. We're sensitive souls, and we're not set up for it quite. On the other hand, I do have a mute button. It's very, very useful. But also, yeah, if you are going to, for example, think that this is an excellent accompaniment to sitting in the bath and listening, you know how when you hear about these really archaic laws and you think, I wonder how that came, that sounds like a really specific incident that happened. So there's a reason why I'm telling you this. Several fold. If you are going to have a bath while listening to this show, please mute, because that is not a good accompanying soundtrack. Also, do actually switch the camera off. Don't turn your phone or laptop mostly shut. Yeah. Yes, Lou. That is, yeah. I was saying to the host, how did you? I thought it was there washing up. How do you know that? I knew. No, I know they were in the bath. I'm like, okay then, I won't press that. But it serves as a really, really useful guide of what not to do. Obviously, this is a grown-up event, so if you need to go to the loo before it's the interval, please feel free. But again, don't take us with you unless you've turned all of the other communications in that way off. Yeah, so that's it really. Feel free to kind of join in where you are prompted to join in and that kind of thing. If you'd like to give applause, there's several different ways of doing that. You can use the chat, you can wave your hands in the BSL kind of applause way like that, which is kind of like a vertical jazz hand, or applaud with the mic on. And I know some people have sound effects like, I don't know, dolphins making squeaky noises and the rest of it. It does happen. So if you want to whoop, holler and cheer, make those noises as well. That's all good. We like that. Yeah, everybody likes getting their ego stroked, and turns out performers are no different in that regard. Okay, so that's it really. Tim or Tom, do you have anything else to say, or shall we launch into Baba Yaga?
Let's launch into Baba Yaga.
Okay, one thing we didn't work out was who's going first. I think Tim's voting me.
I think, yeah, if we do you, then Tim, then me.
Does make sense. Yes, from the different ones you're doing. All right, cool. So, a long time ago and far, far away. That's how it starts, isn't it? A long time ago and far away. And we do that in order that you know that it's not here and now, that it's somewhere else and somewhen else, so that you are prepared if some of the laws of engagement are a little different from what you're used to. A little darker, a little more vicious, a little more unpredictable, a little very predictable if you've heard a long time ago and far, far away before. It's a way of divorcing you from the now or letting you float in the unreality of it. Of course, nowadays, we found that time and distance are a little more elastic than they used to be. A shared delusion of geography and chronology. We could be talking to people from all sorts of different times and places at any time over this, but we all remember a long time ago and far, far away. So a little longer ago and further away than maybe we're used to these days, there lived a magician. And her name was Baba Yaga. Her name wasn't Baba Yaga. You see, Baba Yaga means old woman, that's all it means. So if we want to find her name, we need to go back further. Far away. Deep in the depths of the dark forest. Primordial forest. Because that's where people go, from where the story's from, when it's time to make a change, a transformation. Now, if they were from where I'm from, they'd be going to the coast, they'd be going to that liminal space, but far, far away and a long time ago, they went into the forest. The light starts to fade, the sounds change. It's all very different. I am letting someone in as I jabber in. Yes, Tim, we should have turned off the sounds. Okay. And in the depths of the forest is that place of transformation between the safety of the plain and the ambition of the mountaintop. The place you go where it's time to make a change from lost to found, from youth to experience, from quick to dead. And if you can get the ravens to help you from dead to quick again, it's important to know who your real friends are. And the longer time ago, when the forest was thicker, Baba Yaga had her name, and she had her place, and she was a goddess. But then the axes came, the bright metal carving deeper into the woods, making it smaller, making it thinner, making it easier to traverse. When Baba Yaga faded with the trees, faded into a spirit, faded into merely an old woman. Now, Baba Yaga was the person who sat in the middle of all this place of transformation. She was the one who was wise. She was the one who was wicked, depending on who you're talking to, depending on how they'd approached her, maybe. Had they come bearing gifts? Had they come bearing politeness? Had they come bearing servitude? Or had they come bearing insults and demands? See, it's important to know what good manners looks like in different parts of the world and to different people. So if you're going to ask a favor of someone, maybe do them a favor in return. A long time ago and far, far away, Baba Yaga sits in a house which is propped on enormous chicken's feet that will stride across the country. And when it needs a rest, Baba Yaga will go bounding around the hillside. You know, chicken's knees getting a little stiff as it ages too with her, so she bounds about in her with her mortar and pestle and broom, guiding herself, bounding about with her iron teeth. Who knows why she has iron teeth? Maybe it's just an effect of age, but I did hear once that she chewed through a mountain, so Maybe it all worked out all right for her. And the thing is about a house on chicken's feet, it's not quite stable and it's not quite flighty. It's somewhere in between. But if you know the right words to say, if you are the likewise nameless third prince of the realm, third son of the miller, third son of the old couple, never thought to have any children at all, magical child, one who grows too quickly, one who knows too much, one who doesn't look quite like everyone else, who has a destiny on him bright as a star. If you're a nameless child following the path of fate, you may find yourself at a cottage propped on enormous chicken's feet. Now, maybe you know the right words to say because the salmon told you, or the wolf told you, or the owl told you, or the ravens told you, or you just know it, or you're just particularly good at improvised battle rapping or something like that because you're able to say, little house, let me come in. And it turns, bends its knees, and lets you in to become your transformation. And inside is Baba Yaga. She's old and she's weary and she's told 1,000 people their fate, whether that fate is to get to the top of the mountain or to go into her cellar to be kept as a snack maybe, or as something to be useful later. Nameless old woman, nameless young man. You have a destiny on you, bright as a star, and I'll send you up to the top of the mountain to find the wizard's heart, to defeat the dragon, to rescue your brothers, to rescue the princess, to do the thing that you need to do. But you know what? Just for once, I'm going to ask for something in return. Name it, says the nameless prince, son of a miller, son of the old couple who never thought to have any children at all. She says at the top of the mountain there are 3 wells. There is a well of strength which you'll need to defeat the wizard and the dragon, rescue the princess, break down the glass tower, all of the things that you need to do. And there is the water of death and the water of life which you'll need to revive your brothers where they lie in the snow, and you'll bring spring back to the mountainside. But there is a 4th. We always talk about the 3 phases of the goddess. Starting, middle, end. We don't talk about the 4th one, the dark face that we don't see. And there's always a 4th thing if you're looking for it. Things coming in 3s? Nah. Let's make a 4th, the one you're not looking for. Go on, says the prince. Son of a miller. Son of a child who didn't expect to be born. She says there's a well at the top there, the well of youth. Bring me back a bucket of water from the well of youth. Fulfill your promise and I'll fulfill my promise to you. And the prince, being that kind of chap, says, look, I don't really understand. You're wise and you're powerful and you're magical and you have so many things. I mean, no one's got a house like this for a start. Why would you want to be young again? Being young is not all it's cracked up to be. And the old woman looks at him and she thinks, he might actually do this. One might actually do it. So don't be too sarcastic. But she says, you don't understand and you don't need to understand. You just need to know what I need and that it's within your power to grant it. And he says, you know what, that's a really good point. So I'll see you when all of this is over. And she waits. And she thinks, and she watches his step as he makes his way up the mountain that shouldn't be climbed, but is being climbed by the person with white on his forehead, bright as a star. And she thinks, why would I want to be young? My back hurts. My knees really hurt. And let's forget about the fact that I can no longer really look at myself in the mirror anymore. My hair is brittle, falling out in clumps. I want my hands back. I want something that's a bit less knuckle and a few less lines. I want to have heat in my fingertips again. I want to be able to write my name with my own hand. I want that back. Maybe this time it's not too much to ask. Spring returns to the mountain top where it was never expected to be, and down to the foot of the mountain returns the nameless prince, son of the miller, son of a couple who never expected to have children at all. with his two brothers, or maybe not, definitely a bride, and maybe the heart of the dragon, who knows, but also a bucket that he's been carefully carrying all this way. And you can see every time he's let a drop slip over the lip of the bucket, wildflowers are springing up in his path, bright as fate. Here you are, he says. Thank you, she says. You fulfilled your promise to me and I'll fulfill mine to you. What was that? He said, well, you know, I'm not going to eat you this time, she says. Right, good to know. Okay, so she takes the bucket, she drinks a little, and then she pours the rest of it over herself. The water cascades over her, silver turning to gold, everything springing back up to where it feels like it should be, and she gets her hands back straight. Thanks, she says. And off she goes. And I wonder, in these days of really deep deforestation, and the rumours that Baba Yaga went on to, I don't know, do tarot readings online. Maybe she sells those herbal supplements. Who knows? Maybe she's just one of those anonymous people giving excellent advice on Tumblr from nowhere. I don't know. But she knows. But I wanted to know what happened to the house. Creaky little house on chicken's feet. And so I wrote a poem, and the poem came first, but then the introduction had to come first because it turns out so many people have forgotten about Baba Yaga that I needed to remind them. And this is the poem. And it has at least 3 appalling puns in it, the first of which is the title, Pied à terre. So if you know why that's a pun, well done. A little bit pretentious, but congratulations. And there are others scattered throughout, and I may or may not flag those. Pied à terre. There's a house by the road where nobody goes. Its shingles are withered, and so are its toes. It used to stride freely, its cargo to tote, now it's stuck by the roadside where nobody goes. It's seen witches and princes and desperate beaux, now dust lies in court over ragged old throws. How it used to perambulate? No one now knows. It's a lonely old lookout where nobody goes. Little house, turn round to me, let the sun on your windows, the whole world to see. The heroes would seek it, but peasants would flee. Now it camps out in scrubland and pines for the trees. Its mistress is long gone, which just goes to show that you shouldn't turn around on the word of heroes. Its magic ambitions are covered in mould, and all it can do now is stare at the road. I saw that old house as they northbound flew by, felt its predicament, wanted to cry that its power no concrete could heedlessly bind if it just changed the word that had stored in its mind. Little house, turn round to see that there's nobody stopping me, least of all me. With my mistress's God and no princes to flee, little self, please believe me, I am perfectly free. There's a patch by the road where nobody goes, with a flattened out square bit and marks of huge toes. One day its old tenant creaked, rocked, groaned, and rose to stride off to a future that you'll soon now know. Thanks a lot. Get jazz hands, baby. Love that. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. It's very kind. I've not really done it in that format before, so that was fun to play, to see what would happen next. So I would like to introduce to you Tim Ralphs. He's a storyteller of extraordinary skill. I love watching him and listening to him and finding out new ways to think about stories and think about performance. The way he knits things together is an absolute joy, and I'm going to stop before he gets, because I have a tendency to just get a little bit extra in my introduction, then people get all blushy and funny, and I'm not do that. But he's fucking awesome. So you should really help me welcome him to the spotlight that I'm going to put him in. His face is going to be all big, so Tim, if you want to then shrink us back down to a gallery, feel very welcome to do so. Folks, please make all the faces and the gestures and the appreciative noises for Tim Ralphs, storyteller.
Where are you all? Gallery view, that's where you all are. Well, that was a softly delivered but very extra introduction. Thank you, Fay. And who knows whether this evening's little set will contain that kind of interweaving of which you spoke, or whether it'll just be very tradly told trad tales. We'll find out. We'll find out together. It happened that in Balvenie there was once but one shepherd. His name was Conway McPhee, and he had about him 2 dogs, or I should say a bitch and a dog, the one the mother of the other. And the old girl, oh, she could work. With a glance she had the lay of the land, and she would be flat in every furrow of the field so the sheep could not see her. She would come when she was called, she would go when she was sent. She was a good sheepdog. And her son was useless. Not so much. Big, black, a lot to look at as he loped alongside his master's ankle. But Conway McPhee's black dog didn't care for sheep, didn't care for working, didn't really look at the land at all, and there was no point asking whether it came when it was called, because it wouldn't go when it was sent in the first place, so it was already still there. Anyway, back then, the laird of the land's word was as good as the law, and it so happened that the laird of those parts wanted his flocks fleeced, so he sent out Conway McPhee and a dozen shearing lads. And it so happened that the night was Midsummer's Eve, that they got to the far fields, and they spent all day rounding up the sheep and pinning them down and shearing them. And oh, it was a good, hard day's work they put in, with a moody sky overhead and drizzle kissing and cooling them as they got hot at their work. But there were far too many sheep for one day's work to be enough. So they had to spend the night in a shealing. And a shealing, for those of you that are not familiar, is like one step up from a bothy, right? It's like a bothy deluxe. This shealing, turf walls, a little dry stone chimney, 2 rooms, a little interior room with a lean-to door, and the men had gathered great armfuls of heather to make their mattresses in that interior room. But for now they were sat at the fire, which was in the outer room, making a stew of mutton and oats and eating their fill. And the biggest, the gruffest of the shearing lads, he pointed at the black dog at Conway McPhee's ankle, and he said, "Conway McPhee, why do you feed such a useless animal?" And McPhee said, "Well, when the mother, the old girl, was pregnant with that litter, my wife had a dream. She said, when the pups are whelped, we won't keep but one of them, the black one, and he will do in his whole life just one day's work, but we'll be grateful for it. And when my wife has a dream, I found it's best to pay attention." "Ah," said the shearing lad, "what rot you speak, McPhee. If that was my dog," and he picked up from the pile of logs by the fire on a stout stick, "if that was my dog," he said, "I would beat some discipline into it." And that black dog rolled one bronze eye up at the shearing lad, curled a lip to reveal one canine. "Aye, well, if it were my dog, I'd beat it." And the stick was back in the wood pile, and that shearing lad went on into the inner room to wrap his plaid around the heather and make his bed. And before long, each of the other dozen of them had headed on in, and there wasn't a one of those shearing lads, as he was drifting off to sleep, that didn't say out loud, "Oh, how I wish my sweetheart was with me tonight." Conway McPhee was sat in the outer room for a little longer, by the fire, which was cracking and spluttering. Outside, the drizzle had turned into rain. You couldn't really hear it because rain doesn't patter on a thatched roof, but he could see it splashing around outside through the archway of the outer door. "No," thought Conway McPhee, "better that my wife is snug and warm in her own bed this night. I wouldn't wish anyone here beside me." And then he looked and saw that silhouetted in the doorway there was a woman. Tall, graceful, elegant, even as she stepped in, and behind her another and another and another. These graceful women, delicate and dainty as they stepped into that shieling. And it was funny to look at them, because as the firelight sputtered, it cast shadows on their faces, and sometimes it seemed to Conway McPhee that each and every one of them had a beak of pure white bone. 12 women walked through the little lean-to door to the interior of the shieling, the last of them closing the door. And the 13th woman, well, she just sat on the other side of the crackling fire, looking at Conway McPhee, and he said nothing, and she said nothing back. And the fire sputtered, and the rain fell. And then McPhee heard something that sounded a lot like a man sighing. And then again, and again. And he glanced down at the lean-to door, and in the firelight he could see red pooling and creeping out from underneath it. He said, I think I'll just take a walk. As quick as a flash, that woman sat beside him had a hold of the hem of his plaid and was saying, well, you wouldn't want to go out on a night like this, McPhee. Oh, it's not for myself I'd go for a walk. It's just the dogs need their legs stretching and to relieve themselves. Better out there than in here. But her fingers didn't unfurl from the hem of the plaid. I tell you what, he said, so as you know that I've not gone too far, why don't you keep a hold of that, and then you'll know I'm on the other end. And he picked up his crook and he signalled his dogs, and they fell into his ankle, and he walked through the doorway. And as soon as he was in the lee of the house, sheltered from the sight of her inside, he took that shepherd's crook and he drove it between the turfs of the wall, and he tied his plaid to it so that the wind would catch it and tug as if a person was walking. And then he turned and he ran straight towards Balvenie. He ran with the rain lashing all around him. He ran naked from the waist down with just his thin shirt on him, soaked through and clinging to his skin. He ran, but he hadn't gone half the way there when he heard a shrill howling coming from the shieling behind him. He looked down at the dogs that were still at his ankle, and he said, "You'll go tonight, if you ever go at all." And at that, first the old girl, and then the great black dog peeled away and turned and ran off behind him. But McPhee didn't turn to look and see what happened. He kept on running, sped and sped all through the night until he was opening his own door and slamming it shut behind him, and he was back in his house in Balvenie, and there was his wife, poking at the fire, getting it back warm, and she looked at him like it was the most normal thing in the world for a husband to come in half naked, soaked through, with his shirt clinging so tight she could see his ribs as they heaved and panted for breath underneath. "You know, husband," she said, "didn't I have the strangest dream tonight? I dreamt that our dogs came to the house, and they had such a hunger and thirst about them that they meant to eat the two of us up. Can you imagine? Only we were ready for them, you see. We'd put out all basins and bowls of milk, and they lapped that up and they let us be." "Is there milk in the house, wife?" "Oh, is there milk in the house?" she said. "The neighbours' cows coifed. They've got more milk than they know what to do with, and so have we. Quick." So then McPhee and his wife gathered bowl and basin, filled them with milk, left them outside, even poured as much as they could into the stone trough at the front of the house. And it was just in time, for they saw coming over the low brow of the hill 2 pairs of eyes close to the ground, and the wind carried just a whisper of a growl on it. McPhee and his wife didn't wait. They were in, the door was shut, and they waited all the way through to the morning. And come the morning, well, the storm had lifted. The sun rose bright into a blue sky to welcome midsummer. And they opened the door to the house. And there were the dogs, surrounded by empty bowls, basins, the trough, just with a little puddle of rainwater in them. And those dogs, they were so full of milk as they lay there sleeping that their bellies were bulging near spherical. And they had great clumps of their fur missing, bare patches on their backs. But when McPhee knelt down and touched them, well, they opened their eyes, lolled out their tongues, and looked up in love and loyalty. And things were all right for them. And look, there are more stories that I could tell you of Conway McPhee, his interactions with the other folk, fair crowd, the back and forth over the decades. But you, all of you, sat there cosy in your little living rooms listening in. I don't trust that you would believe me. Oh, if we had the legs for the walk, I could take you there. Beyond Balvenie to that shieling, the one-night shieling, the locals call it. And you could see the tumble-down turf walls and the soil still stained red from where those dozen shearing lads lost their lives. And that is that for now.
Woof.
Thank you very much. I'll say in this little interstitial interlude that story is from, obviously it's from Scotland. It's part of the big McPhee and McPhee's Black Dog, of which there are many variants all over the place and other stories as well. But when I say it's from, I mean it's from a show that I'm going to be launching next year called The Secret Commonwealth, Believe in Fairies. And if you want to be kept up to date with that, feel free to direct message me in the chat with your email so I can subscribe you to my mailing list. Or look, I've probably got a link to a website where you can sign up to it there as well. Yeah, it'd be nice if you're interested to be able to let you know where it's happening. Anyway, I'll Faye, shall I just carry on?
Yeah,
Good.
please.
All right, cool. Yeah, I thought I saw you unmute as if you might have, but that's fine. I'll just go. Good. That's what I was expecting.
Make appreciative noises. That's what I was doing.
Oh, all right. Oh, well, I won't say no to some appreciative noises. Faye's already done a great job of introducing you to Baba Yaga, and I have to pronounce it in the trochaic form. Anyway, Baba Yaga, and I suppose this is a story very much in that era of Axes when she has drifted out of her goddess identity to that more folkloric role, that we're perhaps more familiar with her in. And there are little echoes. You'll spot them. They're not subtle because subtext is not a feature of the fairy tale. There are little echoes perhaps of the goddess still in it. Anyway, that's just telling you where we're going to end up, and we're at the start to begin with. So, Mother says to Big Sister, Go to the meadow at the edge of the forest where the hedges are ripe and rich with berries, and fill your apron with fruit. And be back without getting into any mischief. And Big Sister says, oh, Mum, nothing would make me happier than to go to the meadows at the edge of the forest where the hedges are ripe and rich with berries, and fill my apron with fruit, and I will be back without getting into any mischief at all. And just as she was turning to go, Mother said, and Big Sister, take little brother with you. Oh no, she said, no, not that, not little brother. Little brother doesn't listen. Little brother will misbehave, and little brother smells. And Mum said, you watch your language, and you watch the sky as well. And if you see 7 great grey geese darkening the sky with their wings, make sure that you and little brother are undercover. Yes, Mum, said Big Sister. And she got little brother, and the two of them went to the fields at the forest's edge where the hedges were ripe and rich with fruit, and she held out her apron and she said, "Why don't you pick and fill my apron?" And little brother grinned. And he took one finger and he stuck it up his nose and he pulled out a ripe green bogey and he smeared it on the apron and he ran off laughing. And big sister, well, she had to wipe away the booger from her apron. And then she gathered up berries herself till her fingers were purple, and all the time she was muttering to herself, talking about how she'd like to take every thorn from those brambles and shove them up little brother's nose, and that would show him. And maybe it was that she was muttering to herself, or maybe it was that the wind was blowing in the wrong direction. But she didn't hear the harsh honking of the geese, and she didn't see them darkening the sky with their wings. It was only when she felt a brush of air at a wing beat that she looked up. There they were. And there was little brother out in the middle of the meadow. Little brother, run for cover, run for cover. But it was too late. Oh, he ran, little legs pumping. But 7 great geese flew down. And all that was left of little brother was a pile of feathers and the sound of them flying north. Big sister. Well, big sister knew where little brother had been taken. And big sister was filled with a sort of sibling sense of duty. Because she knew she'd get in trouble, right? If she went home with nothing but an apron full of berries and maybe a couple of handfuls of feathers, but no little brother, she knew that she would get in trouble. And perhaps more than that, she felt like, give me a wave if you are an elder sibling, you sitting here in the audience, right? And you're a story-savvy bunch, so you know that is often the youngest sibling. Fay hinted at it, the youngest sibling that gets to go and have the adventure, right? The heroic one, where the elder ones are consigned to just kind of like rhythm and formula and setup. Not this time. Big sister, apron still full of berries, set her foot to the floor of the forest and began to press in. Deeper she went, darker it got. If she wondered which way she would go, she would just look around until she found a grey goose feather lying there, and then she knew that she was on the right path, and on she went, and on she went. Suddenly, she heard the sound of hoofbeats tearing up the ground. She hid behind a tree. Past her came a rider dressed all in red, and as he rode by, it seemed the whole world was filled with red light. And then more hoofbeats. Another rider, this one all in white, and as he rode by, it seemed the whole world was filled with white. And then hoofbeats again. And a third rider, all in black, and as he rode by, darkness settled. And it was in that darkness that big sister came out from behind her tree. The big sister pressed far and further on into the forest until she came to that clearing where Baba Yaga's house stood. And you know what that's like, don't you? You can picture the great chicken legs with a little hovelly house perched on top, see it scratching up at the earth like goodness knows what it might dig up. So I'll give you this detail. The fence all around Baba Yaga's house that is made from human bones, with each fence post having a skull bleached white and balanced on top of it. And in every skull's mouth, a little candle burning, so the socket eyes shone out. Big sister got to the gate. Big sister noticed that actually the nearest 2 fence posts didn't have skulls on them. Nearest 2 fence posts, almost like they were waiting for a little brother and a big sister to come along and complete the set. Big sister made it in, and because Big Sister was familiar, probably she'd heard the poems, Big Sister knew the words. Big Sister said, little hut, turn to me. And the hut did turn. showed its door with a little rope ladder hanging down, even bent its chicken knee and sank. And Big Sister, still with an apron full of berries, managed to climb up the ladder, knocked on Baba Yaga's front door. "Come in," said the voice. "Hello," said Big Sister, as she stepped into the dark. As her eyes adjusted and she saw the figure, oh, see her with me, that greasy lank hair like rats' tails, that wrinkled face, those long arms, the bent back, the glinting of the iron teeth, the bright of the beady eyes. "Hello, Baba Yaga. I brought you an apron full of berries because my mum says that it is good to go and call round on your neighbours, especially in difficult times, and just check to see if there's anything that you can do to help them." "Oh, is that why you're here?" said Baba Yaga. "Are you sure you're not here because you want to rescue your little brother?" I haven't got a little brother," she said. I'm just berries and to see if you've got any odd jobs that need doing." "Well, it's too late to set you to work now," said Baba Yaga. "So why don't you put your berries in the basin and we'll find you a place to sleep in the shelf over the oven." And so it was that Big Sister spent the night on the shelf over the oven with the berries in the basin, and the next morning Baba Yaga got up and set her to work, and then Baba Yaga went out with her coat and her boots and a great big pestle with a mortar in one hand to boom 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 and a broom in the other to and away she was off to work whatever it is that Baba Yaga gets up to during the day. I know, but I don't want to tell you because it will put you all off the rest of the story. And little sister, Big Sister, sorry, went to work. Sweeping, dusting away cobwebs, scrubbing at the pans. She made a pastry, she baked the berries into a pie. Phew, she worked so hard that her fingers were split, almost to bleeding. And in the evening, Baba Yaga came back. She was impressed at the day's work. She didn't eat Big Sister. Just set her to sleep on the shelf over the oven, went into her own room at the back of the hut, and the next day the same, and the next day the same. And on the third day, when Baba Yaga came home, she said, "You know, girl, I almost feel like this house is too clean for me. Boil me water." And she unhooked the tin bath from where it hung on the wall of the hut, and slowly but surely Big Sister and Baba Yaga filled it up with hot water, and then Baba Yaga undressed, took off her boots, stepped into the bathtub. Now Baba Yaga's feet, one of them is a great iron spike, and she left that hanging over the edge of the tub because she didn't want it to get wet because it might rust. And the other one is a great paddled foot, like a swan's foot, and that she just pulsed, sending the water swirling around the tin tub like a Slavic witchy jacuzzi. "Wash me," she said. "Wash me." Someone wonderfully has put in the chat that she got into the bathtub and started watching a poetry stream. Baba Yaga would not fall for such things. No, not when there was Big Sister to take down the brush and start to scrub at her back. "You've worked hard these 3 days, girl," she said. "So I will let you ask me any 3 questions you like." "Oh," said Big Sister. Okay. Who was that Red Rider and the White Rider and the Black Rider that I saw on the way down here? Are you sure that's what you want to ask? Are you sure you wouldn't rather ask me what I do with the little boys that my geese bring back?" "I'm not that interested in boys," she said as she scrubbed, and then she realised how that sounded and she blushed, and Baba Yaga said, "Oh, my girl, all right then. Well, those 3 riders, they're my 3 sons, aren't they? The Red Rider is the bright red morning, and the White Rider is the white of day, and the Black Rider is the dark of night. Ask another question, and wash my hair while you're at it." So Big Sister started to sink her fingers into that mass of lank rat tail hairs, and as she washed, clumps were falling out, as she washed at Baba Yaga's head, she said, Baba Yaga, the years, many centuries have passed, and apparently if we look at the continuity of this is before you're delivered that bucket of the waters of youth. So how is it that even though your body is bent with age, your eyes are still so bright and clear? Are you sure that's what you want to ask, girl? Wouldn't you rather ask about your little brother? I haven't got a little brother, she said, still shampooing away. All right then, I'll answer. Every night, to keep them clear, I take out my eyes and I leave them in a big jar of pickling vinegar. There's nothing like it. Oh, said Big Sister, that's good. And your last question? Oh, my last question. My last question is this. Baba Yaga, the years, the centuries have rolled by, and yet your wits are as sharp as ever. How do you keep them so sharp? Are you sure that's what you want to ask? Are you sure, girl, that's what you want to ask? Are you sure you don't want to ask me how you might save your little brother from where he's all trussed and bound and tied and gagged in the woodshed at the bottom of my little patch of clearing? No, said Big Sister. Not at all. I haven't got a little brother and I don't know what you're talking about. All right, said Baba Yaga. I keep my wits so sharp, because every night when I go to bed, I unscrew the top of my head and I put my wits on the shelf to keep them fresh. Now, that's enough washing. Pass me the towel. And Big Sister passed and rubbed and toweled down Baba Yaga as best she could. And then Baba Yaga went into her room and Big Sister climbed up on the shelf above the oven. And even though she was exhausted because she'd worked hard those 3 days, she did not fall asleep. She just waited. And when she felt she'd waited long enough, she went in to Baba Yaga's bedchamber. And she could tell that Baba Yaga was asleep because of the snoring, rich and sonorous. In fact, this is difficult, right? Because Baba Yaga's snoring is rich and sonorous, but because she's got empty eye sockets, it reverberates through. So there's no way. It'd be incompatible with Zoom anyway. It's like a Lou Sutcliffe sound effect here. It would be utterly impossible for me on my own to create the sound of Baba Yaga snore. I can't do it. So it's the resonance. So all of you at home are going to have to do this as well. I mean, you can unmute if you want. That will really confuse Zoom, or you can just do it in the quiet of your own room. But it is important that we all gather together on this. I've just seen how long I've been going on like this. Great. I'll wrap it up, Tom. I'll wrap it up, I promise. Anyway, so all together, Big Sister went into the room and she knew Baba Yaga was asleep because she heard the snoring. Some of you think you're too classy to join in. You're the one really losing out. There on the shelf, the big jar of pickling vinegar, and there next to it, Baba Yaga's wits, which were a comb, a length of blue ribbon, and a box of matches. It didn't matter. Big Sister grabbed them, put them into her apron, and she snuck to the door of the hut, climbed down the little rope ladder, jumped the rest of the way past the chicken's ankle to the woodshed at the back of Baba Yaga's clearing. It wasn't even a reference to Cold Comfort Farm. She went to the little woodshed and she opened it up, and there was little brother, tied tight, wrapped up and gagged, and she undid the knots and she took out the little muffling gag in his mouth, and he said, "Oh, Big Sister, I'm so glad that you've come to rescue me." And she said, "Shh." But it was too late. There was a sound as Baba Yaga woke up, and then there was a scream. Because what Baba Yaga had done is she'd put her eyes back in their sockets without rinsing the vinegar off, and nothing stings quite like that. "Run," said Big Sister, and she and little brother were running through the wood, running as fast as they could. But there was Baba Yaga. Well, she didn't have her wits, so she didn't get into her mortar. No, she went running after them with her coat billowing out behind her like a great black pair of raven's wings, and her boots barely on the right feet. She went running after them, and she was so fast that Big Sister reached into her apron, took out the comb and threw it over her shoulder, and where it touched the ground, a great tangle of thorns sprung up behind her, so wide you couldn't see round it, and so thick that a mouse couldn't have worked its way through. But Baba Yaga, she said, that is not a challenge. And she pulled from her pocket a file, and she sharpened her iron teeth and chewed all the way through, and then she was running and running after them until Big Sister reached into her apron and she pulled out the blue ribbon, flung it behind her, and there a great river, as if the spring melt had happened and the banks were ready to burst. And Baba Yaga, that is not difficult. And she took off her coat, and she took off her boots, and there she started swimming across. Now, she swam it in a slightly wonky way, because if one of your feet is an iron spike and one of them is a swan's feet, swimming is difficult, whatever stroke you do. But soon she was out to the other side and running along, splashing along after them. And Big Sister reached into her apron, took out the matchbox, threw it behind her, and a forest sprung up of dead, dry trees with red, papery leaves on them. And Big Sister and Little Brother ran on, and Baba Yaga went running into that forest, her iron spike of her foot striking sparks on the floor, and the sparks caught the leaves, and the whole forest went woomph up in flame. And that was Baba Yaga dead in that story. She has a habit of coming back. But as for Big Sister, Little Brother, they didn't stop running until they were all the way back to their home, and there was Mother going, "Oh, are you all right?" Yeah, said Big Sister, "but we haven't got any berries." "Oh," said Mother, "how come?" And Little Brother, "It was my fault," he said. "All right," said Mother, "never mind." And there we'll leave them. And there I will leave you. Thank you very much for listening.
Spotlight off Tim. Not bloody brilliant. Ah, feel all nourished in a very, very specific way. The kind you can only get when you've just seen a master storyteller do their thing. Oh, it was rather fantastic. Yeah, what Stuart said. Gripping and thrilling tales. Can we have another kind of round of appreciation, however you choose to do that, whether it's in the chat, whether it's waving your hands around, or whether it's making excited noises and happy faces at Tim? That was bloody amazing.
Thank you so much. You're very kind.
So good. We've got a link there in the chat for people to sign up to the mailing list if you want to hear more from Tim. I know I will be. Yeah, and you can follow him on various different social media things. But yeah, he's here right now. In the meantime, yeah, escaping Baba Yaga is always cool. So that will cost you the deathless either way. It's good times. So we're going to have a little, how do we put this, a sample, if I'm going to be really pretentious, a kind of amuse-bouche from Tom Juniper here, to round off our trio of Baba Yagas, and I'm going to spotlight him, and you're going to welcome Tom, who's the reason we're all here, let's face it, to the spotlight, and I'll do a proper introduction in the second half. Let's go! Let's make him welcome. Let's go!
Hello.
Hello.
So yeah, shall I start? This is good. Can you hear me okay? I first heard Fay's Baba Yaga story / poem as part of a longer show at the Fringe a good few years ago. And that's what came to mind when the idea of Baba Yaga stopping being Baba Yaga came to my mind when I was wanting to write a poem about Baba Yaga. So this is Baba Yaga's retirement, and it is part of the collection. About the hut. She's a sweet old thing, really. Has her little ways. Don't be surprised if you wake up at the opposite end of the forest to where you went to bed. Terrified of foxes, you see. bolts at the sight of them, which might sound silly enough given her size, but you must remember she is part chicken. On that note, you cannot be too careful with her feet. Watch out for signs of leg mite, bumblefoot, and gout. I find a good rub down with salve, once a week at least, tends to keep her in fine fettle. Just don't mention, I've written down the recipe, just mind you don't mention the goose grease. It upsets her so. Then there's the eggs. You will generally find a kennel or two lying around outside in the morning, sometimes a woodshed on a big night. She's always been a decent layer, bless her. I usually sell them at the market in my sweet old lady get-up. Traditional Baltic handicrafts, my sign says, and people will pay a good price. It's best to smile and keep your mouth shut. Have your teeth started coming through yet? Your new ones, I mean. You'll find that the rust is a bit of a bugger. Swap out your regular toothpaste for zinc. You'll get used to it. The mortar and pestle. It does tend to list a bit. You'll notice the dents, the small ones where I brace with my foot. The larger one, well, you'll work it out. It is surprisingly comfy. Take-off is tricky compared to a broomstick, but once you're airborne, you'll never look back. Just push off hard with the pestle, get the hut to give you a kick if you're struggling at first, and you'll get the hang of it. Well, that's about it. Make sure you gobble up a few kids now and then, just to keep the locals on their toes and showing the proper respect. And if a young maiden shows up seeking your counsel, eat her. Or help her seek her fortune. Your call, really. Best of luck. I'm off. Do svidania.
Wonderful. Ah, oh, wonderful way to finish that off. Handing over to the next Baba Yaga. Love that. Fantastic. Oh, yeah, so you can get your own copy of one of these, page 39 and 40 is where you will find Baba Yaga's instructions to her successor. In the meantime, can we have another round of appreciation, please, for Tom, that lovely little sample, to give us an idea of the vibe for the second half. Ah, so cool. I'm having the best time tonight, and you're all coming with me. So, yeah, now is a part of the evening we like to call the interval / break / all of that. And yeah, this is what I was at a conference once in work where the person said this is a fluid rebalancing opportunity. Certainly one way of putting it. And she said, don't make the mistake someone else did and call it a fluid exchange opportunity, because that's a whole different kind of meeting. So yeah, fluid rebalancing anyway is where we're at. Yeah, good meeting. So yeah, maybe not so much easy, but we can take advantage of the upside of our geographically elastic kind of meeting at the moment. We have this lovely thing where if you need the loo, there's much less likely to be a queue than if we were in the same venue together, unless you're exceptionally unlucky, obviously. They make your tea or coffee how you like it here, although if you don't have your favorite drinks in, that's kind of on you, but that's all there for you to enjoy. Get a bicky while you're at it, all of that kind of thing. We will be what do we reckon, Tom? What do you reckon? 15 minutes?
15,
20 minutes?
so.
15's good, because it's still poets. So yeah, 15-minute break. Feel free to unmute, chat, talk in the chat, all that kind of thing. People to whom we're live streaming, we're going to be going off live stream for the chat, and then we'll be back again for Tom's part, and we will see you all again very shortly. Let's stop the recording and